Hi guys, hello, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a reading wrap up for August. I feel like it's a little late to be doing this in the month. It's already like September 10th or 11th or something like that, but better late than never. Also, just a little side note, if you hear construction sounds, literally the road is being ripped up right outside of my house. So hopefully it doesn't get too loud. Anyway, like I said, we have our reading wrap up here. Here are all of the books that I read in August. I didn't really have the greatest of reading months. One, because I just purely didn't read that much in general, but then also I feel like everything that I read, or at least the majority of it, was kind of just like very mid. Actually, you know what? I take that back because I did have a couple of like really good standouts. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight into the books. The first two books that I read were from the same series. It was the second and third book from the Covenant series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. We have Pure is the second book and then Deity is the third. Is this not like the prettiest cover? I have already kind of talked about the Covenant series in my last reading wrap up, so if you want to know more about what the series is about and like my thoughts and things on it, go ahead and check that video out. I just kind of wanted to mention that I did read these two, and I cannot wait to jump into the next book this month, which is Apollyon. This one is obviously the fourth book in the series. This one has really cool yellow sprayed edges. I might actually wait until the end of this month to read this one because the fifth and final book in this series comes out October 1st, and that is something that I did pre-order from Amazon, so that will be here on October 1st. So I cannot wait to get back into the series. I have been literally loving it so much. And speaking of things that I love, I just got a new exercise bike from the sponsors of today's video, which is Yes Soul. The specific bike I have is the G1M Plus bike, and it retails for around $500, which is crazy inexpensive compared to other brands that I've seen. This bike is literally so cool. Not only does it look really nice and is like easy to use, but one of my favorite features is the 21.5-inch screen. The fact that this bike has a TV on it is crazy to me. Not only does the screen like display all of the information that you would need for your workout, but if you download and subscribe to their app, you get a ton of additional cool things to make your cycling more fun. The app has tons and tons of different workout classes and programs, which some of them actually incorporate other forms of working out as well, like weightlifting and things, which is really cool. But also there's a bunch of like scenic bike ride simulations if you want kind of like a more chill kind of bike ride. But my favorite feature is the casting capability, aka if I connect my phone to the bike, it will mirror anything that's on my phone onto the TV. AKA, you can watch YouTube videos while you're working out, you can read from the Libby app, or in today's case, you can take advantage of the 360-degree immersive sound. And find a cozy rainstorm video to read and ride at the same time. And anyway, I'm just really excited about this bike. It's a really nice, high quality, like budget friendly addition to my little home gym. And if you'd like to try out this bike yourself or any other product that they have on their website, they have all kinds of stuff. Check out the link in my description and use this code to get $100 off your order. Now let's go ahead and get back to the books that we read in August, and you can totally tell that I have like been ready for fall because 3 out of the 4 books that we have left to talk about are thrillers. I don't think I've ever read so many thrillers in 1 month. And the first one that we got into was The House Across the Lake. This is the book that I have been wanting to read for like 2 years now, and I finally ended up purchasing it this year so that I could make sure that I like forced myself to finally read it. And I think it was okay. This one is about a woman who is kind of having a hard time after the death of her husband. So she goes to her family's, or is kind of like forced to go to her family's lake house to kind of just like spend some time and like heal. But what she ends up doing instead is getting drunk and spying on her neighbors living in the house across the lake. Literally, she spends her time like on her porch with some binoculars, just like watching, looking straight into their house, because the house across the lake basically is one of those houses that's just like tons and tons of windows. Like it kind of like in my brain anyway, I kind of picture it as like the side of the house that she can see is like basically all windowed walls and things like that. So she can essentially see straight into their house. And because her late husband was a bird watcher, she has binoculars. That's what she spends her evenings doing, getting drunk, spying on her neighbors. And as time goes by, some weird things start happening. And then the wife, because basically it's a couple that lives in the house, the wife turns up missing, and she kind of like takes it upon herself to figure out what happened to the wife. This book got crazy real fast. I feel like we spent a lot of time kind of like building up the story, and I'm gonna be honest, a lot of that time I was engaged in the story, but also at the same time a little bored. And I do think, honestly, like thinking back on it, I do feel like the hype surrounding this book, or more specifically the hype around the ending of this book, is definitely, I think, what kind of kept me engaged in the story, because I really wanted to know how it ended. And in a way, definitely did not disappoint, because it was crazy. This took quite the turn, and it was like a very unexpected turn, which actually another book that I read this month was another book by Riley Sager, Survive the Night, and both of these books had very similar, not similar endings in the sense of like the same thing happened, but just like you're kind of like going on one track and then it just takes a sharp turn and you're like, what's going on? And in one way, I definitely like that because it makes it more kind of like fun, because you're like, whoa. But then also, I feel like specifically with thrillers and like mysteries, some of the fun of me reading these types of books is trying to figure out what happened or who did it or that kind of a thing. But when a book like this just takes, again, like such a left turn and there's no like possible way of ever guessing what happened, it kind of like takes the fun out of it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I read this and I was like, there was no way in a quadrillion years I was ever going to figure that out. So I feel very so-so about this book. Like I liked it, but I did get a little bored, but then the ending was crazy and it was definitely interesting, but then I was also a little annoyed. So this was a roller coaster, I guess. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and give it like a 3-star rating overall. I think that's fair. While we're kind of on the subject of Riley Sager and things like that, let's just go ahead and jump into this one. Again, this is Survive the Night, and going into this book, I had kind of a different expectation for it because I haven't heard a whole lot about this book, but literally all of it has been bad. But I would definitely recommend this over House Across the Lake. So I enjoyed it, and it's kind of funny because I would consider this one to have more of a simplistic kind of plot to House Across the Lake, but I feel like I was way more engaged in this one. This one is essentially about these two people being kind of like trapped in a car together on a road trip, and one of them is a serial killer. Essentially, we have Charlie, who is a female college student, and some kind of like traumatic things have happened to her recently, and she just like wants to go home. So she goes to like the community board at her school and like posts like a rideshare kind of situation. She just wants to like hitch a ride with someone, and she ends up being approached by Josh. He's like, I'm going in the same direction, let's go together. So they start this road trip, and quickly into the road trip, Charlie starts noticing some weird things about Josh. When I tell you, I was at the edge of my seat the majority of this book, and you do actually get dual perspectives. If I remember correctly, I do think you do get the majority from Charlie, but you do get some from Josh. So I really liked getting both of their perspectives. I think it definitely added to like the creepy vibes of it. But also like a really random thing that I enjoyed was the fact that the book is actually structured by kind of like a time frame. So it starts off at like 9 p.m. So you get kind of like timestamps as you're going along to kind of like break up the book. I don't know why that was like such a thing for me, but I really liked it. And like I mentioned when I was talking about House Across the Lake, this is another one that took a sharp turn. We were trucking along and then it just went, honestly, when I think back on the story, it feels like I read almost like 2 different books. Like I read a really creepy, eerie road trip book, but then the very end was just like an action movie with like explosions and things. Like took a hard turn. And I think that's honestly all I really want to say about this book. There's like definitely another really big element to it, but I don't want to like say anything about that because I feel like that's definitely one of the things that kind of like added a lot to the creepy vibe. That's all I'm gonna say about that. This one I think I would give like 3.5 to 4 stars. This one also was not like my favorite thriller that I've ever read, but I did enjoy it. And honestly, I think it's gonna be a 4-star because honestly, again, like I said, I felt creeped out by this the majority of the time I was reading it. If a book can give me like a strong emotion, even if the story itself wasn't like my favorite, that feeling is gonna end up rating it higher because it was effective, you know? So those are the 2 Riley Sager books that I read. Now let's go ahead and talk about the last thriller book that I read. I read one romance novel, The Fine Print, but we'll save that till the end. So the last thriller that I read / second to last book for this video was The Golden Spoon. This is the very first audiobook I have ever been able to listen to all the way through. I absolutely loved this book, and I highly recommend the audiobook, and that is coming from someone that clearly does not listen to audiobooks. But this book in particular, so good. And I think it does have to do with the fact that the audiobook had different narrators for every character, but then also I think a really big part of it was the actual story. If you are a fan of The Great British Bake Off, you need to read or listen to this book. I so very clearly could picture the baking tent and things like that. Like I could imagine them like making their cakes and things like that at their stations. Like I so clearly saw the set, and it just made it so good. I loved the murder mystery aspect of it. It kind of like opens up with somebody finding the body, then it kind of like goes back in time, and it's kind of like leading you back to that moment. So you know kind of like the end result, and I kind of like that because as you're reading, you're kind of like trying to put pieces together and things like that to try to figure out who the body is, and then also like who did it. And then also you do again get the perspective of every single one of the contestants on the show. So you get kind of like their backstories and kind of like how their lives intertwine with baking, why they're on the show. But then also there was just like another story in general kind of like happening behind the scenes. And some of the contestants got like intertwined in that, which was really cool. But one of my favorite parts of the book was actually getting like behind the scenes and like the thoughts and things like that of the contestants while they're actually filming the show, which again, not to say like Great British Bake Off 1,000 times, but like if you're not a fan of that show, I don't think you'll appreciate it as much. But if you are a fan of the show, it was so fun because you actually got like pretty detailed sections of the book where they're actually doing the bakes. They like tell you what the bake is going to be for that week. One of them I think was bread, which is honestly one of my favorites when I'm watching the Great British Bake Off. Like I love bread week, specifically because a lot of times they end up doing savory things and it's fun like switch up. But anyway, for example, they had like bread week and you got to know what every single contestant's like bake was, but then also you get kind of like their inner dialogue of like the nerves that they have, kind of like how they feel about the hosts and things that go wrong and things like that. And it is just so good. Out of all of the books that I read in August, this is the one that I feel like you need to read. I think those are all my thoughts on that book. Highly recommend, definitely a 5-star read. Loved it. Now for our last and final book for August, which is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I feel like this is one of those books that like everyone, at least the people that I follow on booktube, kind of talk about or have read at some point. So I was really excited kind of like going into this book. And I will say overall, I did enjoy it, but I didn't love it. The general idea behind the series and kind of how this book starts. Basically, we have 3 men who are the grandsons to a guy that started Dreamland, and he has passed away. And all of them kind of play a role in Dreamland or like his grandpa's businesses. I don't know if they all work for Dreamland, but our main character for this book, Rowan, does. And essentially after their grandpa passes, to be able to like get their inheritance, they have to do a specific thing that the grandpa kind of laid out in his will. So each book in the series kind of focuses on one grandson and his journey, kind of like trying to complete this task so that he can get his inheritance. And again, like I said, this one involves Rowan, who is, honestly, I don't really remember, but he's basically like the new boss of Dreamland, which as it suggests from the cover is essentially like Disneyland. And again, in the will, he's kind of tasked to revamp the park or like come up with a new ride. So he ends up hiring Zara, and she's actually someone that has kind of like a lower level job. If I remember correctly, I think she did like face painting or something like that, but she ends up just kind of like drunkenly submitting a proposal and gets the job. And I guess like the theming between them is basically that Rowan is just very cynical and Zara is literally the complete opposite. So they're kind of always butting heads. I think the setting of this book was kind of like fun and different, and I did enjoy the romance because I do definitely love a Grumpy Sunshine. I think it's becoming like one of my favorites. I feel like I said this recently, but I do feel like Grumpy Sunshine has good opportunity for tension because you've got this guy that's like, or at least it's typically the guy that's the grumpy one. You have this guy that's like fighting for his life to like not feel the things that he's feeling, and this girl is just like chipping away at him, and then he becomes soft and gooey, and it's just like the cutest, most endearing thing ever. Also too, I just like the vibes of like the guy being a jerk to literally everyone else but the girl. So he definitely got those things with this book, which I did really enjoy. But I will say this dragged a little bit for me. So all of that being said, overall, I think my star rating would be, I feel bad not giving it a 4, but I don't know if I feel like it was a 4. I liked it, but I like didn't like love it, you know? I think I'm gonna give it like a 3.75. I very rarely do that with books. It's either like 3, 4, or 5. I like to be very simple when it comes to my star ratings, but this one, I feel like 3 is definitely too low. I feel like 4 is too high. 3.5 seems still a little too low. So we're gonna go 3.75. And with that, those are all of the books that I read in August. We didn't read too much, but overall I feel like we had a pretty good reading month. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you also had a really good August reading month. And I hope now that we're already like almost halfway through September, that you're also having a really good September reading month. I think that's everything that I have to say. I hope you guys have had the most amazing of days, and I will hopefully see you in my next one. Bye.